Hello friends, in this video we'll discuss and we'll see the judiciary which has been mentioned by Kautilya in his Arthashastra. So let's see what is the judiciary concept mentioned in Kautilya Arthashastra. Court would be composed of a bench of 3 judges to decide the civil matters between the disputing parties. Magistrates would sit in bench of 3 to decide criminal matters and would be responsible for reducing the anti-social activities in the society. Magistrates were having power of supervision over the revenue officials involved in collection of taxes. Power of judges and magistrates to levy highest penalty, to levy middle penalty, to levy lowest penalty. So friends, if you see the composition of judiciary as mentioned in Kautilya, there is no concept of a single judge hearing a case. Now maybe a civil case, maybe a criminal case. In both, he has said that it would be a bench of 3 judges or 3 magistrates who would hear it. At the same time, he has given power to levy penalty to judges and magistrates. At the same time, the magistrate had controlling powers over the revenue officials to oversee that the entire situation is in control, there is welfare of the society. Let's see further what he says of judiciary. Following people, judges to take suo motu cognizance: ascetics, women, minors, old people, sick people, helpless people. Now what is important to note is that there is a category of people who may not be able to agitate their own problems, and for which the judges or magistrate could take a suo motu cognizance. So friends, once again we can see that the concept which exists in our judiciary as on today, that any honorable judge or a honorable magistrate, if he feels particularly that there is a necessity of taking a particular matter, he can take it in a suo motu manner. So again, the roots of suo motu which we use today somewhere lie in the Kautilya Arthashastra also. Let's see further. In civil dispute, both plaintiff and defendant were required to furnish sureties so that fines imposed and payments ordered can be recovered. There was a court clerk who would record the statements made before the court. Same cause of action cannot be initiated twice against the defendant. Plaintiff has to prove his case. Defendant has to make his statement immediately, and plaintiff also has to counter on the same day. So friends, once again we see that to avoid the frivolous and false litigations, the surety had to be furnished before the court. The reason is very simple, that in case the court orders either party to make payment to the other side, that particular amount is already available with the court. Further, there was a proper person who could record court proceedings. Today also we have similar kind of a provisions. Same cause of action cannot be agitated twice. We have a concept of res judicata in our civil law, wherein for the same cause of action you cannot file 2 suits or 2 proceedings. Plaintiff to prove his case. Identically today, the burden of proof is with the plaintiff. So once the burden of proof is discharged, then the onus goes on defendant. So identically, the same provisions which prevail today were also there at that point of time. As far as written statement is concerned, there is a particular law on that. So let us see what is that law. Maximum time given to the defendant to file his defense was 3 fortnights, that is approximately 45 days. If defendant fails to file his defense, then in such circumstance, suit would be decreed against defendant by imposing cost. It was the responsibility of the parties to produce their witnesses. If a witness summoned by officer of court, the said officer had to be paid conveyance as well as cost by the party against whom the order is passed in litigation. So friends, it said that within 3 fortnights the written statement has to be filed. Today also we have identical provisions in our civil law that within the specific time limit we have to file a written statement. Also you can see the existence of the concept of ex parte decree if the defendant doesn't appear over there. At the same time, the cost to be bared for getting the witnesses. So friends, once again, if you see, somewhere we see the similarity in regards to the provisions of functioning of a court, like an suo motu, ex parte, payment of bhatta, all that identically existed at that point of time. So let's see further what is written. There should be minimum 3 witnesses. If party agrees to the witness, a case involving debt can never be decided based on testimony of only one witness. Who cannot be a witness? Brother-in-law of plaintiff, partner of plaintiff, person dependent on plaintiff, creditor of plaintiff, debtor of plaintiff, enemy of defendant, person with previous conviction. So friends, once again in this particular law, we can see that minimum 3 witnesses are required. Identically, as we have said earlier, the existing Evidence Act does not prescribe minimum amount of witnesses which are required. Further, it states who cannot be a witness. And when we see that particular list as to who cannot be the witness, it becomes crystal clear that the categories mentioned over there are nothing but what we call today as interested witness. So the chances of those witnesses purposely giving their deposition in favor of plaintiff are very high. So this once again goes to show that as regards the concept and law of witnesses, similar provisions existed in ancient times what we have today. Let's see what is further. Witness has to take oath before a water jar or fire. Punishment was imposed on a witness giving false or contradictory evidence. There were proper guidelines to judges as to how the entire litigation should be conducted. Execution of decree. If cost is imposed on defendant and he is not able to pay, the plaintiff can pay the cost and defendant should then start working for the plaintiff. Or defendant has to hypothecate his property till the amount in decree is paid to the plaintiff. So friends, once again we see that as far as false deposition of a witness is concerned, that was considered as a wrong thing. A punishment by way of imposing of fine was always there. At the same time, there was a kind of a guidelines to the judges at that point of time as to how to conduct the litigations. Also, we can see the provisions regarding execution of decrees which are mentioned. So to some extent, it clearly goes to show that as far as the laws which prevailed at that point of time. All care or due care was taken to see that the laws are properly executed, the witnesses don't give false evidence. In case the orders are passed by honorable courts, the person in whose favor the orders are there enjoys that particular benefit. Interested people cannot be called as witness. A bench of 3 was required. So all this clearly goes to show that there also existed a very healthy kind of a judicial function at the time of the Kautilya. So friend, this was as regards the judiciary which was mentioned by Kautilya. In our next video, we will see what is the matrimonial laws that are being said by Kautilya. Thank you.